Hey there guys, and welcome back to another top 10 list. And no, this time it's not one about Scarlet and Violet. I bet I really subverted your expectations there. No, this time it's all about static Pokemon encounters. We're talking about the types of Pokemon with a known location existing in the overworld or pseudo-overworld. Think back to Pokemon that are obstacles that attack you when they are disturbed, or ones that are always known to inhabit a single area and sometimes even respawn after a set of time. There have been tons of iconic ones over the generations, whether they're famous for their role in the story or for being really good. So my ranking of the day will simply be based on my opinion of which I think to be the best instances of being a static encounter. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and keep in mind some of your favorites. Also, Mystic Umbreon shorts, Mystic Reads, fanfics, exclusive Pokemon content. Anywho, with that, let's get started. We're gonna start in Sinnoh, as in all games taking us to this region, you'll find a Drifloon that hangs out by the Valley Windworks. Now, it's definitely not some amazing Pokemon, right? I mean, Drifblim is actually pretty solid, and this is the only way you're even able to obtain Drifloon in those games. It's definitely an interesting Pokemon to choose for this sort of role, since there doesn't seem to be anything that is all that special about it in the end. Though I still find it to be a cute little Friday surprise at the Windworks, since it is a balloon and naturally it would enjoy spending time in the wind, just hanging out and having a good time. All I can say is, make sure you never try holding on to it, or else you're gonna pay big time, with a long trip into the sky that you're not expecting. Next up, we have the Lapras that hangs out in the Union Cave in Johto on Friday nights. I love Lapras a lot. You guys should know that by now. But I kind of love the idea that it hangs out in the Union Cave even more. The idea that this thing is just hanging out with its friends in this weird little pool deep in a cave sort of flies in the face of the main concept of Lapras being a fairy for people. How in the world did it end up in the bottom of a cave just floating there? Where is this new one coming from every Friday? It just feels so odd. But then again, I'm glad for it. Lapras is a really good Pokemon, and in a generation where your water type options are oddly very physical, Lapras is a nice special attacking option with good bulk. That's not to say it's the only one you have to choose from, but being unique and having access to some good TMs and a strong level up move pool makes it a Pokemon most people should want to use. It also makes the Union Cave a bit more special, as on the surface, it's kind of just a boring run-of-the-mill cave that connects two cities basically. Shout out to Lapras for being a good Pokemon and an excellent decoration for this cave. I want to keep it in Johto for my next spot, which I'm going to give to the Sudowoodo that blocks your way from reaching Ecruteak City. This is arguably the second most iconic obstacle in Pokemon games, behind one we'll talk about a bit later in this video. For one, it's a bit of a pain in the butt to even get what you need to make this Sudowoodo attack you. You have to overcome Whitney and her Miltank. That really sucks, and nobody wants to have to deal with that. But you have to beat the game anyway. Sudowoodo isn't exactly the best Pokemon either, but it does have some merit to it as a rock type. This is also the only one in the entire game, so it's important for those that want to complete the Pokedex to make sure when they run into this thing that they actually end up capturing it. I enjoy the stupid dance it does when you poke it, and the fact that it's a fake tree, so it gets a nice mention here today on this list. So this next Pokemon is a little different from most on the list, as it's one from the post-game, but it isn't a legendary Pokemon. They're not counting on this list today, or else it's just all going to be taking up spots. I'm talking about Volcarona in the Relic Castle, right down in the depths of those sandy chambers. Obviously, Volcarona is a seriously powerful Pokemon, and they do a great job making it look like a huge deal being down in the catacombs of the Relic Castle. It does speak to a bigger problem about Volcarona, putting it here only in the postgame. It's such a good Pokemon, definitely one of the best non-legendary bug types we've seen, but it's nearly impossible to get for a playthrough. You can get a Larvesta egg on Route 18, but that thing won't evolve until level 59. That's a super long way away. So I guess, yeah, they really like making Volcarona seem like a big deal, and I'm into it. At least in the Univin sequels, you can actually get it much sooner, so that makes it a more viable option to use on your team, on top of being a cool static encounter. We're going to complete our first half of the list with some more static Black and White 2 encounters, and this will be the duo of Mandibuzz and Braviary. They're available in the original Black and White games as well, but they're in a different place and much later in the games. For the sequels, they're found roosting on Route 4 and just enjoying themselves minding their own business at the end of a small construction site on either Monday or Thursday. I also don't want to forget to mention, these birds have their hidden abilities as well. That means you get a Mandibuzz with weak armor and a Braviary with Defiant. Those are some interesting abilities, and considering how annoying it is trying to find Pokemon with their hidden abilities can be in the 5th gen, having them so easily available is a dope thing. I think that while I'll always be a huge fan of using Sigilith in Unova, going with Mandibuzz or especially Braviary is not a bad idea at all. This can really help build an in-game team when nobody really feels like using Unfezant. So closing out our first half feels like a great spot. This top 5 will open up with the most recent static encounter we have on the list, the shiny Ponyta you're able to get from a side quest in Legends Arceus. At an earlier part in your adventure, you'll take on the quest A Peculiar Ponyta, that is all about just finding a shiny sitting around in the Horseshoe Plains. Now, I know it's not exactly the most interesting thing to find a shiny one sitting there, and not having to really work for it outside of going to one particular area, but it's still a cool free shiny, and one you could easily use in a playthrough as your fire type. However, you know, it is kind of easy to just get a shiny in Heat anyway, which held back Ponyta from being any higher on this list. Though, to be fair, we do have another Pokemon in the same position coming up soon. It's just a tad bit more iconic. So the next Pokemon is Rotom, in the Great Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl games, hiding inside of the old chateau in the Eterna Forest. Now, we all know why Rotom is great, so I'll focus more in on that. It has 5 different typings it can switch over to. Now, back in the original Sinnoh games, you couldn't really get your hands on the other forms, because of the Rotom Key being an event-exclusive item that just wasn't easily obtainable. But in the remix, they went ahead and give you the key as soon as you catch Rotom. This leaves you free to gain any number of electric types with awesome secondary typings to use super early into your journey, and definitely makes Rotom a pretty nice option. It was probably more so just some Pokemon that confused people back in the day until they realized what it was capable of doing. And now it gets all the love it deserves and is an excellent Pokemon for anyone to use in a playthrough that they practically beg you to use with how easy it is to get. Imagine picking Torterra and for instance running the Heat Rotom. Good luck to any ice types coming to hurt your guy. Or if you have Infernape, go with Frost, and you've got the perfect counter to the starters of your opponent. It's such an easy, versatile Pokemon to run on your team, and takes an easy spot in the top 5. Today's bronze medal Pokemon of the video is going to be Darmanitan, another Pokemon in the Desert Resort in Black and White. It's only found in its Zen mode, and with 5 of them hanging around outside the entrance to the ruins you can find Volcarona hanging out in. Now, don't get it twisted. Sheer force under most circumstances is the better ability in a competitive way, and at times in a playthrough. But Zendarmanitan is no slouch either, and this is the only way to get one in these games. It's just such a solid fire-type Pokemon to use, and the fact that Game Freak literally gave you 5 different chances to get one. Though you do need a Rage Candy Bar, so there is a little bit of a caveat as you can't just interact with them to obtain one. But it's worth it. Talk about an absolute powerhouse of a static encounter. It's time for the penultimate spot, which is absolutely the second most iconic static encounter we've ever seen in a Pokemon game. There is an argument to be made that it is the most iconic, but I'll leave that to you guys. We're talking about the red Gyarados in Johto always hanging around there in the Lake of Rage waiting for you to take it on. It was the original shiny Pokemon for most people, as probably the vast majority of people who either started with the first generation or with Heart Gold and Soul Silver made this the first ever shiny Pokemon. It's so widely known and captured that sometimes it actually makes it disappointing to find an actual shiny Gyarados out in the wild. There is just no better introduction to something than shiny Pokemon with this Gyarados in my opinion. It was awesome to see and so different. Again, it definitely could have ended up in the number 1 spot, but boy oh boy did it just lose out this time for me. Alright guys, the best static encounter in Pokemon history. Come on. It's Snorlax in Kanto. The first ever static encounter you ever come across, as well as the first ever real obstacle you need to overcome that will attack you after you make it move. I know some people might think of the Marowak in Pokemon Tower as the first static encounter, but you do end up coming up on Snorlax beforehand, even if you don't battle it first. So I can't help but count it as the true first one. It's a Pokemon that almost anyone would end up adding to their team as soon as they encounter it. And they give you 2 to capture, and you can end up with leftovers as an item from grabbing it. There is so much to be gained from running up on Snorlax and capturing it. And it's just one of my favorite Pokemon and such an icon in this conversation. So while there may be some biases here, it's still a very understandable choice from my perspective, I think. Well, alright guys, that's it. The top 10 best static encounters in the history of Pokemon as chosen by yours truly. I know this is a big topic potentially not everyone has ever really thought about, so I want to know what you guys think. What are some of your favorite static encounters? Is there anyone you're upset I forgot? I want to hear from you. So as always, I'll be on the lookout. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. We're finally here in 2023, and I'm super excited for what this year has to offer us. There's potential DLC for Scarlet and Violet on the horizon, and who knows just what else Game Freak may have up their sleeves. It's going to be really exciting times coming up for a Pokemon fan. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. I've got a really fun series starting up there very soon, and of course, have a weekly edition of my Should You Use series focusing on Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. Also, if you're into fanfictions and what ifs, check out Mystic Reads. I offer a ton of creative spoken word content on there, so come join me. Thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you all next time.